Hi, my name is Andrew, and thanks, Filippo, for this kind invitation to speak here today. And for those who don't know me, I work for Ai2m, and also have a background in surgical education, and really hope to represent some of my colleagues over at the ASE back in the U.S. And so I'm here really excited to speak today about some of our work, having worked really closely with our clinical partners, such as the surgeon scientists, the research teams, and also our data scientists, to address a really important issue or an area of research, which is essentially to enable actionable insights within robotic surgery. And so what is actionable, you might ask? It is one that derives an action to improve. However, it's also both meaningful and also interpretable. And so Tony did a fantastic job providing an overview of our digital products, and along with Gretchen, providing some review of data integration. And I'll be taking a little bit deeper dive into the evidence that have been created by our clinical partners by leveraging the rich data sources like the kinematic metrics there. And so how do we drive towards an actionable insight, or OPI, in robotic surgery? Well, we have invested in digital technologies that have enabled over 55 primary research studies by our clinical partners. And one of the first questions that they've asked a lot of the times has been, how do we actually characterize surgical skill using OPIs? And so while there are three different ways, one, you can compare these metrics with experience. Andrew showed an excellent example how efficiency metrics could actually be much better at characterizing skill than experience. The second is actually characterizing these metrics and seeing how they compare with these subjective assessments. And then finally is also characterizing OPIs to a specific clinical outcome. And so when you take a deeper dive into a subjective assessment, such as OSATs, GEARS, or EPAs, they're actually really initially important to derive an action. And it's because these assessments has already created constructs or domains to look at surgical skill holistically, such as efficiency, tissue handling, operative flow, and then achieving surgeon autonomy. And so I'd love for folks here to think about, again, efficiency in a little more deeper manner, and I'd love to see people think about what are different components of efficiency you can actually improve upon. And so while this research method are based off of using Likert scales, we can actually connect them to OPIs and actually interpret them by using these similar domains as categories. And so much of this excitement in surgical data science has evolved around them being objective, but also scalable to assess operative performance using kinematic-based metrics. And so you can see here that we have metrics that categorize different areas of surgical skill, such as camera or visualization metrics like camera control rate or the distance of the tools from the camera. Also risk articulation too, one that can associate to suturing, but also stapling. And so with the recent launch of DV5, with force applications, we have metrics that can be categorized in tissue handling by using force feedback. And so this is a novel way to look at tissue handling using forces being measured at the instrument tool tips. And so one of the first studies that was needed was to look at the way that OPIs might relate to the subjective domains of surgical skill in robotic surgery, such as GEARS. And so in this study performed by Dr. Dano and colleagues in thoracic surgery, you can see here on the heat map, by looking at the strength of the correlation, that efficiency is one of the most important domains to consider when you're looking at this relationship to surgical skill, along with OPIs such as instrument movement and smoothness. And so while we can uncover skill using these types of associations, study designs using simulation to help characterize skill can do that without clinical factors. And so these factors can include patient ones, such as case characteristics, anatomy, and its variations, and disease ones too, as well, such as the disease state and the severity and how it might contribute to case complexity. And so we can remove these clinical factors using simulation to really focus on the technical aspects of surgery. And so here is an example from Dr. Ahmed Ghazi and his research group at Johns Hopkins, showing how we can actually track instrument kinematics in one of his hydrogel simulation models, mimicking radical prostatectomy. And so, and this is one of the data collection events that we performed at the urology annual meeting a couple of years ago. And so using these kinematic movements, we can help create advanced visualization of the tool movement in ways that it can actually be used as an objective metric itself. And so here you can see not only the size of the 3D path length plot, but also that might relate to surgeon experience, but also how smooth that instrument moves, such as the scissors in the light green on the right, but also the passive retraction tool in the red. And so again, visualization of surgery is one way. It's one way to look at the exciting future to interpret a OPI there. Another method to derive an actual insight is using this ontology-based definition for phases and steps. You can see how dissection and reconstruction phases can be broken down into its respective operative step in a procedure, and within those operative steps, research groups like Dr. Ghazi and also Andrew Hung have looked at that bottom-up approach towards creating feedback using these gestures. For example, you can define these gestures as groupings, and so in Dr. Ghazi's work, you can see that compound movements can relate to either a dissect, retract, or clip or cut within our work, or also ones that Andrew have really nicely, elegantly talked about for needle positioning, driving, and suture cinching there. And I'd like to highlight one of Andrew's really great work that was published back in 2022, where he did a fantastic randomized control study by incorporating that tailored feedback with OPIs by using both video review, but also a visual diagram of these metrics to enhance learning by trainees in a suturing simulation study. And you can see in this feedback group in blue how the trainees actually achieved a higher, an enhanced learning outcome sooner compared to that control group by using this mechanism of feedback. And so this type of feedback can be applied in a real-life scenario using a goal-based coaching framework by using OPIs delivered through Ai2m and case insights, and pair them with actual video review and verbal feedback. And so this type of qualitative studies that look at implementation of coaching with objective metrics can actually reveal insights into which OPIs that are important to derive performance improvement within surgery. And so, for example, to improve efficiency, a surgeon might want to consider their instrumentation exchanges while reviewing video using this goal-driven feedback. And so I believe on everyone's mind that uses our surgical systems is to not only build a world-class robotics program, but a data-driven one, one that aligns with our quintuple aim that Tony highlighted earlier. And so there are some more important milestones to achieve this by. And so you can start this with data integration, and then how to understand how this data relates to surgical skill. And so we've shown a lot of that evidence here to help support that. But also build new novel methods to derive an outcome-driven insight, thereby improving efficiency to follow, but also ways to reduce costs. And so also looking at ways to implement best practices using programmatic approaches. And so again, a lot of these previous studies and evidence from that large library here that I can also talk about later on help chip away at that mystery of solving that mystery of surgery with the goal to derive that true outcome-based insight. And so finally, I'd like to close on this exciting future towards where precision medicine will likely become a reality. One where we can actually individualize care to a specific patient to achieve the best possible outcome. And so rich data sets do exist today. We can see this in everyone's lecture during across these different sessions here. But it's really about connecting all the different types of factors that might contribute to that specific outcome, thereby surfacing a more actionable outcome-based one, whether that prioritizes an oncological outcome or one that is functional in nature. And so building types of frameworks will undoubtedly help achieve this exciting future for more personalized care. So I'd like to end. Thank you.